touch a little on how things have been when I became an adult. So it's very interesting, and I'm hoping to start doing some editing very soon to look at a printer, and sometimes later this year or early next year, that people can have the opportunity to read that book. In the meantime, I continue to write some articles, and I'm going to share with you this evening an article which I have written for the 51st, or the magazine for the 51st conference of the Caribbean Public Services Association, which will be held in Belize in July, towards the end of July this year. We meet every year, and this year the meeting or the conference will be held in July. And so far, I've written 2 articles. One, I'm looking at the current political leadership in the region, and in comparison to what existed a few decades ago. And the other one has to do with Public Service Commission regulations that I can share sometimes in the future. Next week, the women's arm of the union will be hosting this program, and they will look at pension. We have written to the Dominican Social Security requesting an officer to be our guest on the program next week, God's willing. So that will be very interesting. And of course, I'm not too sure whether it's Delia Wicks, but that edition of the program will be hosted by the women's group. And every time they host, I'm sure you will agree with me that they do a fantastic job. So we look forward to next week. But let me start by saying the following. That in 2 days, we are asking a question, whether in 2 days Caribbean, we are witnessing the likes of a few political stalwarts and progressive leaders who stood up against oppression and colonization. So we're asking that question. Are they not instead, our current leaders, some of them not instead, creating the foundation for possible uprising against recolonization and decolonization? And I'm asking the question because one of my favorite leaders was Michael Manley. And I'm asking the question, which current day leader emulates or has much in common with former Jamaican Prime Minister Michael Norman Manley? Manley became the 4th Prime Minister of his country when he served from 1972 to 1980, and from 1989 to 1992. So he served from 1972 to 1980, and from 1989 to 1992. Manley had a very strong trade union background, which no doubt contributed to his close relationship with the poor majority of his people, and his democratic socialization philosophy saw him in his role as Prime Minister, introducing policies and programs to lift Jamaicans from the shackles of colonization and poverty. In 1974, for example, Michael Manley established a minimum wage. That very same year, free education from elementary to tertiary level was introduced in Jamaica. To deal with high rate of illiteracy, his government established the Jamaican Movement for the Advancement of Literacy, JAMAL, to administer adult education. Manley gave much attention to the farming community, and land reform was introduced. Along with the introduction of equal pay for women was maternity leave. So he introduced this whole idea and legislation to deal with introduction of equal pay for women as well as maternity. Along with the introduction of equal pay for women, well, I said so, was maternity leave. And he eliminated the stigma of illegitimacy. The abolishment of the Master and Servant Act was replaced by what was known as the Labor Relations and Industrial Dispute Act, which provided workers and trade unions with more autonomy. Through the National Housing Trust, workers could now have a house of their own. So that became possible under Manley's leadership. Manley's government subsidized uniforms, meals, and transportation for disadvantaged school children. Pension to workers were increased, and workers' participation program was brought to fruition. Free healthcare, as well as the family court and new mental health law, were introduced in Jamaica. Budgetary allocation for education was significantly increased, and the recognition of trade union at the workplace was automatic. Very, very important, very interesting. That free healthcare, as well as a family court and new mental health law, were introduced in Jamaica. While some other leaders during Manley's era would have done much to bring about a better or improved way of life for their people, in my opinion, none of them did as much as Manley or surpassed his efforts. Hence, my reason for selecting him for comparison with some of our current day political leaders. Let us compare Manley's genuine style of leadership and the policies to what is happening in our regional territories today. The enactors of legislation, which are geared towards safeguarding workers' rights, are the very same people who violated some of those laws. Fear of an in-your-face political victimization seems to be the order of the day. While respective constitutions speak to the independence of Public Services Commission, the majority of members on the commission represent the government, are appointed based on political allegiance. The informal discussions which take place sometimes between those members and their political party leaders cannot be overlooked. Hence, one of the reasons why in many instances we end up with square pegs being in round holes. Despite repeated pronouncements that economies are doing well, when the unions get to the negotiating tables, they encounter a lot of resistance from governments who provide their own justification for not wanting to grant reasonable increases to public officers. So governments will tell you that things are okay, that economies are doing well, but when you get to the table and you're negotiating for salary increases, it's a different story. When, for example, in one of our sister countries, the government is offering 1% after 10 years, you ask yourself whether that is not madness. Adherence to the conditionalities set by international financial institutions for financial assistance has resulted in layoffs, hard tax imposition, and denial of salary and wage increases. There are countries in the Caribbean where there was massive layoffs in the public service, and salaries were not increased, and benefits were denied. Minimum wages in many countries remain archaic and far out of line, out of tune with the rising cost of living. Vigorous steps are being taken to discontinue some hard-fought-for benefits and allowances to public officers. I will continue as I pause to take this call. It seems like the topic is already generating some interest, so let us pause and take that overseas call. Caller, good evening and thank you for calling.
Mr. Layton,
Good evening.
good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
You see what you speak of Michael Manley governance?
Yes.
I watched two people get in an argument, and the lady literally cussed out Andrew Holness. And, because I think in their administration, they made some statement about Michael Manley, and the people came back strong in defense of Michael Manley.
Yes.
But that kind of leadership that you speak of now, Mr. Later, it seems like it's a dinosaur in the region.
Mm-hmm.
And in your opening statement, you made a line about people having a resistance, and which, in so to speak, is going to cause a revolution. The way we are going, because there is more money flowing now than there was back then in the region, and the people are in worse condition. The economies are in worse condition. It's not that the people in leadership don't see money coming in. The money is coming in, but the leaders are corrupt. Then your other part of the question, to see who is compared to a Michael Manley. And I'm sitting there while you're speaking, and I'm thinking of who can I compare? And I can't come up with one. The closest person I could think of closely was the leader of St. Kitts, and I can't think of nobody else. So I don't really know who is going to compare to Mr. Manley.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm listening, my brother.
Thank you very much, brother. Thanks for the contribution. Very interesting, very interesting. So in continuing, I say that unlike what pertained in the past, housing allocation is not necessarily based on needs, but on the fact that one becomes qualified because of political affiliation. That is what exists presently. Assessments and recommendations by housing and welfare officials are in most instances ineffective. Sometimes they are not even asked to investigate and to make recommendations. That same approach applies to scholarships and professional training. Parliamentary representatives do not decide on those matters only, but they also make the decision as it relates to relief assistance. So following natural disasters where materials are given for housing repairs and food supplies, they influence who gets and who do not receive. In countries where they do exist, the recommendations from local government authorities are not always taken into consideration. Now, I stated that Manley developed a strong relationship with the poor and underprivileged in Jamaica. Today, many politicians, after winning the confidence of the electorate, they go into hibernation until the eve of the next general election. So they come to you, they talk to you, they bribe you, they give you stuff, and you do not see them until the next general election, when they return begging for another chance and capitalizing on bribery. All right? So these are some of the facts ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, no sooner, another thing I know we all notice is that no sooner is the Bible by which politicians swear or take their oath is placed back on the table that they renegade on their promise to perform without fear or favor. They swear by the Bible that they will perform the duties of their office without fear or favor. But no sooner is that oath over and they place the Bible back on the table that the favoritism starts, the victimization starts, the hatred for opposing views starts, and is a total and complete mess. Opposition forces are treated with disrespect and castigated, and consultation becomes non-existent. Trade union views and recommendations are ignored, with those leaders forgetting that the privileges, and that is very important, that trade union views and recommendations are ignored, with those very same political leaders forgetting that the privileges which they enjoy by virtue of their being in office became a reality as a result of the sweat and sacrifices of trade unionists and their followers and members. What a great degree of ingratitude. I think I need to repeat that. That trade union views and recommendations are often ignored by political leaders who forget that the advantages, the positions which they enjoy by virtue of them being in office, that this became a reality as a result of the sweat and sacrifices of trade union leaders and trade unions members and followers. And I see what a great degree of ingratitude. The simplest organized protest will see the wrath of military forces and police being brought down on protesters, many of whom end up in cockroach and rat-infested prison cells. I think I need to repeat that again, that the simplest organized protest will see the wrath of military forces and police force being brought down on protesters, many of whom end up in cockroach and rat-infested prison cells. Some politicians become very large property owners overnight. Of course, there are many allegations of shady deals being entered into in order to acquire their fortunes. Instead of being protectors against exploitation of state resources, they become the exploiters. They remain very adamant in not providing any clarification or explanation when questions are asked by the public. In fact, they will attack and ostracize those who dare to raise concerns. Brothers and sisters, this is an article written for a regional organization. And it is an article which is not limited to any one Caribbean country. It is based on certain trends which have been observed taking place in the region. And I believe no matter to which organizations we belong, whether it's church organizations, whether it's trade unions organizations, NGOs, whatever group private sector organization, we have a responsibility to speak against some of those things which we see occurring in the region, things that many of our leaders before stood up against. Friends, our numbers are 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097. Our overseas line is 305-432-9624. I'm inviting your comments on what I have just said. So we look forward to hearing from you, and you're free, feel free now to call in and to make your comments as we continue the program. For those of you who always follow us on Facebook, I indicated that we are not there this evening, and I will repeat a little later why. Thank you very much, caller. Good evening to you. Thanks for calling. We have lost that caller. So you could try again. I don't know what went wrong. I really thought that we had you there with us. But I'm sure the point that you're about to make is a very interesting one. So please try again. Yes, my friend. So this is the situation. And even in our local setting, we had our own heroes, people like E.O. Libler. We had people who stood up against injustice, who stood up against any unfairness. And you know, one of the things I saw a video by Michael Manley where he said that he was not interested in purchasing any expensive car, that he was satisfied with the car that he owned as prime minister. And a very humble gentleman. I remember when I went to study in Jamaica some years ago, Manley was very active. That year I went to Jamaica, he lost the elections. But prior to that, this man did so much for his country. Today, as our first caller said, when you make this comparison, it is difficult to find people who fall in the shoes or fit in the shoes of the Honorable Michael Manley of Jamaica. Thank you for calling, caller. Good evening to you.
My brother later, good evening.
My brother, good evening, and how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah, it's a nice topic you have this afternoon, brother later.
Thank you, my brother.
Yeah, but brother later, how I look at it, right? In those days that gone, in time as times move on, I believe mankind themselves is getting more greedy, more devious, more evil, more deceitful. Because if you have to look at Manley them, I was maybe little boy when Manley them, but I hear about Eric William, Manley. I think Adams was from Barbados, and you know a few of the leaders in the brother letter. They was not about enriching themselves. These men they used to live simple lives.
Right.
But these leaders we have today, they come into office not to serve people, but it's to enrich themselves. It's to steal the resources of the people. And that's why they have to send police anytime they have a little. They're not interested in serving their people, because in time of Manley, them remember we had just come out of what slavery had done been, but we were still under colonization.
That's right.
So Manley them understand the struggle, they understand how people have to make ends meet. They understand the situation our people were under. So they had to come up with strategies to educate our people, to train our people, to make sure our people healthy, health, education, sports, to make us a better people. But that crop of politicians we have, they are not statesmen, brother, later. There's a difference between politicians. Not all politicians are statesmen. I always try to make people remember that. These guys are vagabonds, they are lawbreakers, they are hooligans, they are criminals, brother, later. And they dress up in jacket and tie, tell you to vote for them. They give you what they give you. You said not realizing what is really happening. They just bribe you for $200-300 for 5 years. And before the 5 years end, they have how many mansions, how many fancy cars, they have bank accounts all way behind God's back. Brother, let them, we have a two different set of people, man. I think the people, human being now, in general, I just believe are just more evil, man. They're more greedy because if you have to look at leaders like Patrick John, even Castro, Fidel Castro, I mightn't like his philosophy and his ideology, but these men didn't come in power to enrich themselves. They wear natural clothes, move like me and you. When they go in a place, Miss Charles, she'd go in the market by herself. Or with maybe with she and Mona Piper and, these people are simple people, but when you have leaders that know what they do in their cocoa and son, so when they move in, they have to move with an entourage, 6 vehicles with how many police with big gun guarding them. I mean, they just separate themselves from the people, brother, later. And every election they come and give you some crumbs and you're supposed to fall for that. Anyway, my brother, I'm listening to you. It's a good topic. I want to hear the callers. I want to hear the views of the callers. So I'm listening good tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, very controversial topic. And we have another caller, of course. Caller, good evening. Thank you so much for calling. You're on.
Good evening, Mr. Letta.
My dear friend, and how are you?
Not bad, no, it's long time.
Yes.
You all had a program last week?
Yes, we did. We spoke, as I said, we spoke about electoral reform.
Oh, because we were down the road.
And somebody got so upset with us because we were talking about electoral reform. They reported us to Facebook saying that the Dominican Public Service Union is a fake organization. So as a result, that is why we are not being followed on Facebook.
I can't say long. Let me, I want to know if anybody can see if that leader, they say, that gang leader of Dominica, if there is any fault he do not have. If he have one thing that he's good at, because I know he have got nothing that he's good at. I will call later. I'm just throwing that out there.
All right. As I said, what we're trying to do is look at that thing from a regional perspective. What is happening in the region. We all watch television, we listen to news, what is happening. And when we meet at conferences and you hear trade union leaders speak to what is happening in their country, it's the same happening in almost all the countries. Yeah, so that is how it is. And we just have to stand up against those things. Caller, thank you for calling and good evening to you.
Mr. Letta, good evening, and how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you, my brother.
I know you are alone, Miss brother. It's not with you.
No, but he's caught up in work related.
Okay, all right. Mr. Letta, I'm listening to you, and I'm saying to myself, you see, the way I am looking at what is happening now and what happened then is that the politicians of old, they were coming to serve the people. But most of the I'm going to make the distinction. Most of the politicians today, they do not come in politics to serve. They come to rule. So what we have now, we do not have politicians as servants, because the politicians are supposed to be your servant. We have politicians as rulers. And some of them act as if they are kings, So there is a great difference now. What is happening now and what happened then. And I believe, if you have to look at our Dominica context, Mr. Libla, From all reports, Mr. Leblanc was somebody who was serving the people.
Yes.
All right? He came there to serve, and a lot of things, good things happened under the reign of Mr. Leblanc, because the poor man, got a lot of awareness when Mr. Leblanc was in government, and then today, even civil servants and everybody, and a lot of the gains you made then, some of them are now taken away from you now. So the distinction is clear. They are not coming to serve now, they're coming to rule. Have a good evening, Mr.
Thank you very much for your contribution. I really appreciate it. Caller, good evening. Thanks for calling.
Yes, good evening, Brother Lita.
Good evening, my brother.
Brother Lita, when I look at Dominica today, Brother Lita, Dominica is not the Dominica it used to be. Dominica has changed drastically. Because, Brother Lita, listen to this. Where in the days gone by, you could find a minister like Raymond Blackmore threatening the people of Dominica because they are standing up for the democratic rights. They want electoral reform. Even electoral reform belongs to them. It don't belong to no politician. It don't belong to no political party. It belongs to the people of Dominica. And then later, I listened to Reginald Ossie himself and Sogofly also on the radio, threatening the people of Dominica for standing up for what it belongs to them. So you're right, brother, later, what you're saying is the gospel truth. Not the Dominica.
All right, caller, we have lost you. I don't know what is the problem. Whether it's your phone, caller. Sorry, we have lost you. Not any fault of ours here. So maybe check your phone. Another call, overseas line. Good evening to you, and thanks for calling.
Yes, sir. Good evening to you too. And I trust that everything blessed with you.
Yes, thank God.
Mr. Later, that's a very good subject you have tonight. But Mr. Later, we don't have to go too far. You've been following the political thing in Dominica forever. Much older than me, Mr. Later. Have you ever heard a politician in the past on a campaign trail saying that they have snipers, they have Navy SEALs, they have this? Have you ever heard no politician tell you go to hell, none of your damn business, Mr. Later, in the past? Have you ever heard that before, Mr. Later?
No.
We can't compare and contrast this madness that we have going on right now. Is it just a matter of time? Mr. Later, I think Dominica have the worst set. You just wash your foot and come, Mr. Later. That's what you have in Dominica right now. So to make the that is just night and day, Mr. No, we cannot compare them jokers there with quality or people with knowledge in politics, Mr. Later. A politician should be someone that's really taking care of when you win your constituency. It don't matter I vote for you or not. I'm entitled to a scholarship. I meet the criteria. You have to give it to me. You don't have to go to bed. You don't have to force yourself on me for a scholarship, Mr. Later. So, Mr. Later, don't compare and contrast them criminals we have calling politicians right now. Take care now. Them rapists and them pedophiles that we have. Bye-bye, Mr. Later.
That's your view, but that does not reflect the view of the union, no Q95. But we'll pause here for a little music.
Freedom fighters, freedom fighters, freedom fighters, freedom fighters.
Luciano, one of my favorite reggae artists. Freedom fighters.
Freedom fighters. Bob Marley was a freedom fighter. Peter Tosh was a freedom fighter. Jacob Miller was a freedom fighter. Sister Nanny was a freedom fighter. Marcus Garvey was a freedom fighter. Martin Luther was a freedom fighter. Jomo Kenyatta was a freedom fighter. Selassie is a freedom fighter. Fighting to within humanity. And all the captives from captivity, yes, yes, fighting for justice and equality, just to set our people free. Oh Lord, then John was a freedom fighter, Garnet Silk was a freedom fighter, then Nassau was a freedom fighter, Green and Tinga was a freedom fighter, Mahatma Gandhi was a freedom fighter, Bookman was a freedom fighter, Shaka Zulu was a freedom fighter, Prophet Muhammad was a freedom fighter. They gave their lives.
Well, we are taking a grim look at the current political leadership in our region, and that is in comparison to what existed in a few decades ago, or what existed a few decades ago.
Tearing down the policies, lockdown. Burning Spear is a freedom fighter. Tony Wheeler is a freedom fighter. Admiral Tibet is a freedom fighter. Tristan Palmer is a freedom fighter. Mikey General a freedom fighter. Luciano is a freedom fighter. Morgan David is a freedom fighter.
Our numbers, as I said, are 4493-095, 4493-096, 4493-097, overseas 305-432-9624. I think we have another caller. Yes, caller, good evening, and thank you for calling.
Hello, good night, Mr. Lita. What's up?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah, that's your brother in the struggle, Washburn Coffee, man.
Hey, what's happening, my brother?
Not too bad, man. Very good discussion. I had to punctuate by domestic activities, man, to make a call, man, because I find what you're talking about so relevant in terms of the type of history, that we should be learning, and getting to know of, to strengthen our mental capacity, man, to deal with what we have before us today,
Yes, man.
I find it so relevant, and I was fortunate enough to have been, because you were talking about Michael Manley.
Right.
And I was fortunate to have been in Jamaica, in some conference having regard to cooperatives and rural development and so on. And a lot of it had to do with what Jamaica was doing at the time.
Yes.
And I recall as well that there was a component of that program in Cuba. And I was fortunate to have met, a lot of Jamaicans who at that time in different learning institutions in Cuba, in the work brigades and so forth,
Yes.
And that was because of the philosophy of Michael Manley. I also visited because you talk about the land reform.
Yeah.
And he used in particular, cooperative organizations. You would know that Jamaica was big in sugar production, and he organized some of the estates, Money Mosque, and some of the names come to my mind. I visited some of these places to see their systems of management and organization and so on. So these leaders, they really had a special type of vision, because you see at that time you also had Mr. Forbes Burnham, Dr. Forbes Burnham in Guyana. And
correct.
You would know about the Guyana being developed as the cooperative model. It was called the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. And a lot of us got trained in Guyana. A lot of us under the Patrick John regime in youth development and in cooperative development. And I think even in teaching and so forth, a lot of programs were being made available to Dominican people, involved in NGOs, in cooperatives and so on, to develop their capacity.
Correct.
But that was based on the fact that these guys, deep in that vision, was people development. And there is a significant departure away of that kind of development model. And that is leading to a lot of the social problems and some of the lack of development in terms of our economic development. So, I just wanted to place that in terms of what you're talking about, and I am hoping that a lot of that kind of information and history can find somewhere in our library is in this order. But these elements of information supposed to exist somewhere where young people can access it and use that in their concept for development in years to come. So that is my contribution to your program tonight. But I will be looking forward to your publication, and you're giving me the inspiration for me to do mine. So that,
You must do that, Joashibi. You must do that.
yeah. So good program, man.
Thank you, my brother. Thanks for calling, and very, very good contribution. In fact, everybody who have called this evening have made some very good contribution, and I really appreciate that. Thank you all so much.
Yeah. All the best. Sir.
All right. God bless.
Okay, good.
Everyone is crying out for peace. Now is crying out for justice. I said, everyone is crying out for peace. I said, now is crying out for justice. But there will be no peace till man gets equal rights and justice.
Equal rights and justice, Peter Tosh.
Justice. Equal rights and justice. Equal rights and justice.
From the discussion, from the calls, it would appear that two things drive some of our people to go for politics or to enter politics. Not all of them. Mark you, I said some. I want to repeat, some. And as one of our callers said, it appears that it is to rule, not to really provide a service, not to really help their fellow men, but to rule and to grab. So many people enter into politics for two reasons: to rule and to grab. And that is why the kind of representation which we expect sometimes are just not forthcoming. And that reminds me of some of the politicians I knew of, people like Rayland St. Louis from Granby. This was a man who was simple, very dedicated man. And he gave so much in return. So I remember this man as a parliamentary representative. All right? I remember their interaction with people. People like Stanley Fedel, for example. I remember all these people as pal rep. And they were there. Ask yourself, what is it that they got in return? I can talk about them because at some point they represented my constituency. If you understand what I'm saying. And those people, they left. They were not richer than when they first entered politics. As a matter of fact, maybe some of those guys left politics with having more financial problems than when they entered. But it is a different kettle of fish nowadays. People do not feel uncomfortable seeing that sometimes in the short space of time that they have been representing people. When you look at the mass amount of wealth that they have acquired, you ask that question. You know, I'll continue as I pause to listen to this caller, to whom I say good evening and say welcome and thank you for calling.
Good evening, brother. How you doing?
Hey, not too bad, my brother. How are you, man?
I'm fine.
Everybody's okay?
2 points quickly. Everybody's fine.
Yes,
2
man.
points quickly.
Yes, bro.
Last week, the reverend who called about the when you asked me the question about voting on dead people's name, I have a feeling he has done it before.
Okay.
So that's why he could not answer the question.
Okay.
Now, coming to your point tonight,
Mm-hmm.
I have seen Stanley Fidel and Raylan St. Louis
Mm-hmm.
laughing and joking in my father's shop in Pishley,
I won't tell you no.
right? So even I hope you don't think I call his name, Henry George,
Mm-hmm.
used to talk about he and Mike Douglas laughing and sharing jokes together.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what happened to these fellas now. Something is drastically wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and I blame our people for that. Have a good night, brother.
All right, my brother. Thank you very much for that observation. Yes, I know when it comes to Stanley Fidel and Ryland, that kind of behavior existed. Caller, thank you very much for calling. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Mr. Thomas, and thank you for your topic this afternoon.
Thank you.
I'm not getting late, but I just had to contribute.
Yes,
You know, Mr. Thomas, the thing is, politicians before worked for their vote because your vote depended
Mm-hmm.
on your performance with the people,
Yes.
how you impact their lives, how you improve their livelihood. And politicians had to go in and work towards that goal of getting the vote next time. But when you have an unfair election,
Mm-hmm.
when people can manipulate the election system, they don't have to think of the vote
Mm-hmm.
because they know they don't depend on the vote to return to office.
Okay.
And I think that's the biggest sin that Dominica ever got, that people can get into office, political office, through illegal means, by cheating, by buying, by bribery. And I think that's the foundation of our problem. Unless the people are the one, that's the power. The vote is the power they have. And unless they have that power in their hands without interference, then that is what the result will get. I don't want to contribute that.
Thank you very much. Good
Thank you and good
observation,
night.
caller. Thank you. Good night. God bless you. Take care. Yes. So people do not really have to work. Some people not really have to work for the votes, and they know what will cause people to vote for them. And you know, it is very, very sad when in 2023 people will offer you roofing material, people will offer you chicken and money to vote for them. And you know, the sad thing about it, the sad thing about it is the people who are offering you those things do not feel bad about it. They do not feel bad about doing it. They feel very, very comfortable. Caller, good evening. Thank you for calling.
But Mr. Letter, they will give you galvanized and wood. And in the next election, they'll give you the nail. At that time, the wood and the galvanized already spoil. I just cannot understand what is happening to our people. And the people that were going up for election before, they wasn't looking for nothing from you.
That's true.
They wasn't coming and eating your kitchen, nothing. You just know it's a good person to represent you. You was voting for the person. But now it's greedy, our people greedy, and that is it. That is how it is. Thank you.
Yes, growing up, what I saw politicians were doing was their house to house. That was a popular thing. They would visit you house to house. They would do their campaigning and meetings, house to house and meetings. These were the two things that I saw when I was growing up. House to house campaigning. They had people going around with them. I mean, the place would be covered with flyers. You get up in the morning, and on all the posts, you would see posters and flyers. The village well decorated. And the good thing about it, people would not tear down flyers that were placed by the party that they do not support. They would put either below or above the opposition, whatever the opposition has put. And that is how it was. It was just fun. Election was just as it was Christmas, you know. You listen to people. I mean, as a young man, I enjoy listening to this gentleman from St. Joseph, Alvin Aman Trading. I mean, this guy could speak. He was one of the guys I always wanted to hear him. People like Mike Douglas was somebody you enjoyed listening to. These were good speakers, man, and you want to hear these guys. But things have changed, and things have changed for the worse.
No sleep last night. I've been dreaming of you. Please hold me tight. I just can't help the way that I feel. I just can't help the way that
And as we said, it's a Caribbean thing. It is not anything that is unique to any one Caribbean country.
you took my heart.
Victimization is real, my friends.
I just can't help the way that I feel. I just can't help the way that I feel.
Thank you for calling. Good evening to you, caller.
Mr. Letter is a Caribbean thing, but Dominica is worse to it. None cannot cut Dominica. Thank you.
All right. What can we do to change it? That's a big question. I want to hail up my good friend, Brother Dangle Ben, in Grand Bay. How are you doing, my brother? At Radio Abamago. Our overseas line. Good evening to you.
Yeah, good evening. Mr. Later, we're talking about Manly.
Mm-hmm.
But Dominica had some good leaders, But I must congratulate Mr. Edison James.
Mm-hmm.
When this man came in power, Eugenia tell people take a rest, Banana was done,
Mm-hmm.
Dominica was on the brink of collapse, financially. And when that man came in power,
Mm-hmm.
that man see to it that musicians in Dominica had to get something to start off.
Yes.
He formed World Quail Festivals with another group of people. When he watched Dominica, our cricketers, all our cricketers in top shape form, and we are not being recognized in the world. This man, this side Dominica need a stadium with very little resources. That man had that stadium, you know. When he looks soccer, the man go and decide that Dominica has to be part of FIFA for young men to look at something to go somewhere. The man, they even said in Mumu, and when the man gave a speech in FIFA, they said in Mumu talking. After that, when the man look at Dominica, Dominica was importing $32 million worth of poultry meat every year. The man start a program where people, small farmers, can grow their farm so that they can reduce on the imported food from overseas. So I must give. That's why I must say, workers, the United Workers Party is one of the best things God gives to Dominica. And what we facing now is because of the iniquity of Dominicans that wanted to go corrupt. So they bought them out for them to go for the most beautiful. That's why we are how we are there. But Eddie James, may God be with you and your family. God bless Dominica. Thank you.
All right, Colin. Thanks for your expressing your views. Thank you.
I were the sun way up there, I blow with love most every
Little from Otis Redding as we are with those calls.
when the sun goes down, just to let you know that I'm still around. That's how strong I love you. Whoa.
And sometimes, you know, we have to say it as it is. I mean, everybody has their faults, but I think we have had, and not only in politics, we have had a lot of good leaders in Dominica. And sometimes I say to myself, we don't recognize our leaders, not only in politics, but in various fields and professions.
Tears are gone, wrap you in my colors and keep you warm.
We too much believe that things are wrong or right, depending on who is talking about it, who is advocating for it.
Whoa. That's how strong I love you. I'll be the ocean so deep and wide.
For example, we have no national hero. We do not know of our history. We had people who fought so hard, slaves who were enslaved, and they fought very, very hard for the liberation of our people. And those things are not the history of these people, the struggles of these people, the contribution, that's the word, the contribution that those people made are not even taught in our schools. You know, so and it's only when people like Bernard Wilshire came on the scene that he made mention of some of our Maroons. There are some books I try to get copies of, which I am not able to, but there are some people who have written some history on some of our leaders, about some of our leaders, you know. But apart from that, the young people do not have any feel of the contribution that those people made. Why don't we have our national heroes? You know, some countries do have that, but not here. As a matter of fact, even if some people would consider you as a national hero, depending on what you advocated, statements that were made, what you stand for, you are viewed as a national enemy and not a national hero. Can we continue with that? We definitely need to do better than how we are doing as a nation. We need to do better than that. We need to listen to each other. We need to listen to everybody's views and opinion and we not just listen, but weigh out things. And after you have done it, you have assessed the situation that the person is talking about, and do it. But we are where we are today because a number of people have made contributions. They have been making recommendations as to how this country can be developed further. But as I said, if it comes from certain people, nothing doing. Kaipul Kwazi. Where is the level of maturity that should have accompanied our political independence? Sometimes when I listen to the responses coming from politicians, responses to statements, progressive statements that have been made by our people, when I listen to some of our talk show hosts, the nonsense coming out from their mouth, the infantile, childish statement, I wonder. When I listen to some of our professionals, people who are very qualified, educated people, and you hear the garbage that is spewing out from their mouth, you ask yourself, where are we as a nation? What does the future hold for us as a country? We need to do better than that because we attained political independence 45 years. It's not 5 years, and it's not 10 years. It's not even 20 years. 45 years, almost half a century ago. Have we stopped and asked ourselves that question? What have we done to make sure that we have moved Dominica far, far, far from what it was in 1978? To tell you where we have fallen short would need a program by itself. So I'm not even going there this evening. But while we have made progress in certain respect, we are lacking behind in a lot of areas. And the sad thing is, what are we doing to correct the situation? What are we doing to correct the situation, to make things easier and to bring progress and development? But you know what? We are influenced. We are so biased because of our political affiliation. And that is what we strive upon. Even when we speak of leaders in the past, depending on which political party that they came from, we will not give them the flowers that they deserve. We'll remain silent. And you're talking about people who were leaders not long ago, And children or young people, let me say young people, have never heard of these people. What a shame. What a shame. We need to do better than that. And when I go to certain countries and you hear of the admiration that people continue to have for their leaders, their past leaders, some of them have gone, some of them have passed on. You feel so good and you feel proud of those people. Can we say the same for Dominica? And if I have to answer my own self, the answer is no. Somebody passed, they die a year, 2 years after, we hear people talk about them. 3 years. But from the time you pass 3 years, they are forgotten. We forget the contribution that they made. And sometimes these are leaders who came from the very same party that some people are in. But it's like they are forgotten. But let me say to all of us, how proud would families of great deceased leaders be when from time to time they hear mention being made of their parents? We do not even have expressed that gratitude that we can remind the families of those who have passed on of the contribution that their parents made. You know, the most we may do may just be name some place, some structure in their name. But again, that only happens if the government or the party which forms the government that they came from that party. But what level of maturity would we be displaying that even if you are in government and somebody who was or who belonged to another party made a significant contribution and you name institutions after their names? But you won't do that. You may find, for example, that a facility or a structure was built by a government or by a party which formed the government, and a new government comes in power. And I'm talking about the region. It happens in the region, all over the place, that instead of naming that school or that building after somebody, maybe the education minister of the time or whatever, they will name it after somebody who did not significantly contribute to the construction or development of that facility. But as I said, what level of maturity would we be displaying if the opposite was happening? At the end of the day, all Dominicans are Dominicans, my friend. And if we are saying that we are living in a democratic organization, we have to be mature enough to be able to accept the fact that we will be criticized, that there will be differing views and opinions to what we may have. We have to accept the fact that there are people who will be very, very vocal in what they say. Very vocal in what they say. And that is no reason why we should dislike them. And I believe this is the way we have to go. This hatred which exists, that should never be in a society where we speak of Christianity. And this hatred exists at all levels of our society, in every field, in every profession of our society. Where people hate people, and because of that, there is disrespect. There is no recognition for their contribution, and not because they have done you anything. This Christian principle, which says to us that we should love our enemies in a lot of instances do not exist in our society. This the first opportunity that we get to dehumanize somebody, to belittle people, to attack their character, we will use it and we will do just that. My friends, Dominica belongs to Dominican, not to any one group. And every country in the region belongs to the citizens of that specific or that particular country, and not to any one person or a group of people. But we do not see that being demonstrated at all times. Friends, we are fast approaching the end of our program, and I just want to state that we can take maybe one or two more calls before we end the program. So I again invite you that you may call in, and we will be very glad to listen to you and to hear your views and your opinion on what I believe, and as many of our callers have indicated, is a very interesting topic, looking at political leadership today in comparison to what existed before. And some very, very good comments were made. How do we correct it? What do we do about it? Is it a matter for more education? Is it a matter of trying to reach those who are not being reached? What are some of the strategies that should be put in place? Are we educating our people? Are we behaving as servants to the people? Or are we behaving as their bosses? Whether we find ourselves in politics, whether we find ourselves in the public service, providing a service, or even in the private sector, where we are offering a service to the general public. We need to do better than that. We need to come better than that, because we have a country to serve. We have a country to develop, and we need to do that, and we need to always be at the service of our people. We need to do better than that, my friend. All right, so as I said, we may be able to take just one or two more comments, and we should be able to, we'll be ending our program. So please, if you have any comments, let us listen to what you have to say. All right, just about 6 more minutes before we wrap it up. All right, my friends, next week, God's willing, of course, we will be on again with you. Caller, thank you for calling. Good evening to you. Good evening, caller. Thanks for calling. I don't know what went wrong. All right, caller, we seem to have been some problem with that line. Please try another line. I'll be happy to listen to you, listen to your views, to your comments. 5 minutes to the hour, based on the clock on the wall. It might be a little fast, but I go according to that time. So, friends, here we are. Very interesting topic. Good weather. We're in the hurricane season. We have to pray to God that He will protect us from any serious system this year, and that this year we won't experience any bad hurricane. We need that. We need that peace. We need that safety, and we need God to help us let the country get a little breathing space, that all of us, in our own little way, can contribute to the development of the country in whatever way that we can. So that is very, very good, very important to us. And we have to begin as a country to think positive. Let me try that number again. We seem to be having problem. Caller, good evening. Thank you for calling.
Good evening, Mr. Later, to you and your listeners.
My brother, how are you?
I'm very fine, thank you. And I just called to say on the last sentence you said there, I called to say amen to that. We put Dominica in the hands of Jehovah God. What man cannot do, Jehovah God can do. And what man cannot give, Jehovah God can give. So we place Dominicans and Dominica in the hands of Jehovah God. I bless you and your family, your union, and the Commonwealth of Dominica. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, my friend. God bless you too. And thanks for calling. Thanks for the contribution. And I agree with you. We have to place Dominica in the hands of God, and we have to depend on God to help us in whatever way we can make our contribution to do it. And to encourage people not to just lift their hands, send up their hands in the air thinking that it's all over, that better cannot be done. We have a country to save, and we have to be willing to do it. Let us all be engaged in doing it with love. So I want to thank everyone for who called. Thank you all for calling. Thank you all for listening. And we are hoping that next week, God's willing, we'll be back on Facebook, and we will continue to do what which pledged to do. That is to continue to serve our country, continue to work in the interest of Dominica, and in particular in the interest of public officers and all people who we represent. We are at the end where we are about to see the conclusion of the job classification exercise, and we look forward to the implementation. We were an integral part of what was happening, and the union, we did make certain recommendations for some positions to be further reviewed. That was done, and as I said, we look forward to the recommendations of the consultants. Thank you all. God bless. Good evening. Take care.